the Simcha of Purim. Because it says, Mishenichnas Adar Marbin b'Simcha, when Adar comes in, Simcha increases. And today, increases much more than increased yesterday. The more you go into Purim, the more Simcha you get. We mentioned minhagim of several Hasidic circles, how they don't say Tachanun already starting from the 11th of Adar, because you could already start reading the Megillah on the 11th of Adar as the very beginning of our Mesechta. Let's go. Right? The very beginning of our Mesechta says the Megillah could be read on the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th of Adar. We don't say Tachanun today in the 15th of Adar because it's Shushan Purim. When the Jews in Shushan were fighting, they weren't alone. The Jewish people all over the world were with them and were suffering with them, davening for them, trying to support them. And it took them an extra day to win their enemies, and they could only rest on the 15th of Adar. That was also a simcha for the whole world. So everywhere in the world celebrates the 15th of Adar, whether you're in Shushan, Yerushalayim, or anywhere else in the world. However, if you remember in the Gemara, we asked the question, Ve'ema shitzar v'shivsar. Why can you not read the Megillah? Maybe you should be allowed to read it on the 16th of Adar and the 17th of Adar. And the Gemara answers, V'lo ya'aver ksiv. The Megillah says that you can't pass. You should not go past the days of reading the Megillah. However, a hava mina in Torah is also Torah. A assumption or a question in Torah is part of the Torah. It's holy. It's even if you only learned these words of the Gemara, just the question, in the morning, you would have to make a blessing, a birchas HaTorah, a bracha to learn Torah, even if you're learning just this question. So because of this, that the Gemara has a havamina, a thought to say that perhaps Megillah could be read on the 16th and 17th, from there already they say that these days have a holiness in them. We don't read the Megillah because of V'lo Ya'avar, but these days have the same power and the same greatness and same specialty as Purim, and everything that happens on Purim happens on these days as well. And they don't say Tachanun on these days either, because Tachanun is a very delicate thing. A person has to do teshuvah, and on a day we don't say Tachanun is considered as if we said Tachanun in the most perfect way, with a perfection. So therefore, in many places, they don't, many circles, they don't say Tachanun on the 16th and 17th. On Shushan Purim, in addition, the Shulchan Aruch says how one should increase in simcha and joy. And the Megillah itself says we have to make these days Yemei Mishta v'Simcha, days of feasting and joy, not just replace which celebrates Purim on the 14th of Adar should make a Simcha on the 14th, and the place which celebrates the 15th of Adar should make a Simcha on the 15th. But both places should make Yemei Mishta v'Simcha, days of joy, days of feasting. And you see that there are times when you read the Megillah on a different day. For example, if Purim is on a Friday, in Yerushalayim, they read the Megillah on the 14th. You don't read the Megillah on Shabbos, and because there's a decree, you might come to carry the Megillah. However, they read the Megillah on the 14th, the day of the rest of the world. And if Purim will come out to be on Shabbos, you read the Megillah, I said, on the Friday or on the Thursday. I mean, there's a famous question asked, how come we have by almost every holiday, Rosh Hashanah, Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuos, we keep 2 days of Yom Tov, 2 days of the holiday, because of Sveika D'Yoma. Outside of Israel, it would not be particularly, you would not be sure what day the Yom Tov would be, how many days Rosh Chodesh there were. And so therefore, the communication took time. So therefore, we always kept 2 days. And outside of Eretz Yisrael, till today, we keep 2 days, although we have a fixed calendar, and although it's not hard to communicate nowadays what's happening in Eretz Yisrael to outside of Israel. Well, how come on Hanukkah and Purim we don't keep 9 days of the Yom Tov, and how come on Purim we don't keep 2 days of Yom Tov? The answer given is because we want to make a difference between a Yom Tov, a holiday, which is said explicitly in the Torah. For example, Shushan, Sukkot, etc. It says explicitly in the Torah what day the holiday, what day the Yom Tov is. So there we keep 2 days. And a Yom Tov and a holiday which is totally rabbinically from the Sanhedrin, rabbinically sourced, which is Purim and Hanukkah, which happened during the near the time or during the time of the second Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, they said when it's a rabbinical based holiday, you can rely on the rabbinical calendar. You don't have to make an extra day. However, that doesn't mean that you don't have to have SImcha on that day either. Because you have to, that's only a reason why we don't have an extra day of reading the Megillah, but an extra day of SImcha, that we definitely do have. So SImcha continues even till today, even further on. Let's continue with the Gemara. Ma'aseh Egel Harishon. We quoted a long brisa from Mesechta inside of the Gemara, which gave several places in the Torah where you used to have the Balkari reading the Torah, and had a translator to translate it. You would read one pasuk, one verse, and the translator would translate it verse by verse. So there's some parts which were read but not translated because it could be embarrassing, or it could be judgmental, or people could misinterpret. So those who understood the original Torah reading in Hebrew understood, and those who didn't. Some things were not even read, and you had to learn it by yourself. But the Bryce is now going through a list, first of Torah portions which are read and translated, which you might think maybe they're sensitive topics, you shouldn't talk about it out loud. And then we're going to talk about more things which are read and not translated, and then things which are not read and not translated. We went through a whole list. The creation of the world, we translate it. You might think that you shouldn't. People will come to ask too many questions, think they're an authority when it comes to learning, when it comes to Torah. The story of Lot and his daughters, you might think not to translate it. You might think to protect the honor of Abraham, Lot's uncle, tells you that you could read it, you could learn it. It tells you that Mashiach comes from there. The story of Tamar and Yehuda, where Yehuda's daughter-in-law, whose husband's passed away, Yehuda had relations with her. You might think it could be embarrassing for Yehuda. We shouldn't translate it. And it teaches you that Yehuda admitted later on that he was wrong, making a mistake, when he wanted to have Tamar punished, when really she was innocent. We're up to the next one. Ma'aseh Egel Harishon Nikra U'Metargim. The first episode of the golden calf, the first 20 verses, saying how the Jewish people made a golden calf after Moshe came from Mount Sinai, while he was on Har Sinai on Mount Sinai. You read it and you translate it. Pshita, why not? Gemara says, why should you not translate it? It's part of the Torah. Gemara says, now I might think that should be protective of the honor of the Jewish people. It could be embarrassing for them. That look, you just got the Torah, and this is the way that you acted right after. Kamash Milan, we want to atone for the Jews, and if somebody says in public what they did wrong, then it's considered to be a kapara, a atonement. Now, unlike Reuben, when Reuben moved his father's bed, to his to a different tent, to the tent of his mother Leah, as opposed to Bilhah, we don't translate that because that's a little bit different. It's embarrassing for one individual. But over here, it's an embarrassment for the entire people. We're not pinpointing any particular individual, and therefore it's considered to be an atonement, a kapara of what we did. Continues the Gemara. In two places in the Torah, in the end of Chumash Vayikra and Parshas Bechukosai, and in Parshas Kisavai, which is always near the end of the month of Elul, the Torah says 98, in another place a different number of blessings and curses, and we bunch them together, that you read it and you translate it. And if you read them, it's very disheartening. And it says themselves, the Jewish people came to Moshe Rabbeinu and says, how are we ever going to handle this? You see, if somebody transgresses the Torah, what happens? And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu right away had to start off with the next parsha, Parshas Nitzavim. Nitzavim is you are standing in front of Hashem. Hashem loves you, and you have the power and the ability to do good. So says the Gemara, the blessings and the curses are read and translated. Gemara says, Pshita, why would I think differently? For sure. Gemara says, I might think to say that this will be too dismaying. The people listening will become dismayed and become upset. And why make people upset, especially on a Shabbos, when they hear all the punishments that can happen if you don't keep the Torah? Kamash Malan, it comes to teach you that you should not be worried about it, and you could tell people, and people could hear about it, and they go together. Now, the reason why it's called Kollel Eretz Hatzvi, curses and blessings, although in the Torah, if you read it first, it says brachos. It says the blessings first. Baruch atah b'ir, Baruch atah b'asada. First, blessed are you here, blessed are you there. And here in the Brisa, it said Kollel, curses first, is because the whole reason why you will think not to read it is because of only the curses. That's the blessings are no problem to read. My father, Al Shalom, when he was a chassan, so there was a special custom that the Rebbe would give his siddur to a chassan. If someone getting married that day, to daven mincha from that siddur. It's a special mincha. They say the mincha before your chuppah is the most important mincha of your life. And you do teshuvah, you say al chait, you fast that day. And the Rebbe would give his siddur that he would use to a chassan. And the Rebbe gave my father the siddur that day when he was getting married, and he told him you should ask for all the brachas. I think that's what the Rebbe would say to many chassanim who are getting married. So the Rebbe said we should ask for all the brachas, all the blessings. So we read all the brachas in the siddur. So we read, besides for davening mincha, you read the entire V'itim Lecha, the blessings that we say in Matzah Shabbos. You read Birchas Kohanim, any other brachas that were there in the siddur, he read out loud. Now we need to say in the Gemara, particularly, I might think to say, I should be concerned for the honor of the Jewish people. I should be concerned for the honor of Yehuda. I should be concerned for the honor of Avraham. The Gemara has to spell it out every single time. Because by each time, you might think, here's an exception, I could read it, the other place is not. By Lot, he wasn't Avraham. He did something by himself. Avraham cannot be blamed for it. Maybe there's an exception, I could translate it. By Yehuda, you could say he's an individual. I could translate it. It does no bearing on the whole nation. If you were talking about the whole nation, you could say, here I shall read it, because I have to learn how to do teshuvah. Later on, we'll have a story of David and Melech, King David and Bathsheba. And truth is, David never really sinned. Always a questionable thing, etc. But it says in the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, if you say David sinned, you're making a mistake. So you might think to say that David really sinned. I shouldn't translate it. So you have to say David did not sin, etc. Continues the Gemara as haros v'oinshin nikrayin u'metargimin. There's many different mitzvahs which the Torah says there's a punishment for this mitzvah. Whether the persons will be cut off, either they'll pass away at a young age, or they won't have a portion in the world to come, or skila, or one of the punishments that Beis Din gives, whether it's malchus or punishments, etc. So there's many different warnings and punishments in the Torah are allowed to be translated. Said the Brisa. Asked the Gemara, Pshita, why should you think that you shouldn't translate it? Obviously, it could be read and translated like everything we've said above. The Gemara answers, and a very special thing. I may think to say, you should be willing to deal. I will come to serve Hashem out of fear. There's two ways one could serve Hashem, out of love or out of fear. Kamash Malan, it comes to teach us that you're not concerned for this. Chassidus, this is half of Chassidus, right here. Talks about Avas Hashem, Yiras Hashem, the whole Tanya. How could I come to love Hashem? How could I come to fear Hashem? We define what is love, what is fear. The very lowest level of love, the very lowest level of serving Hashem is called Yiras Ha'inish, being scared of punishment. Now, it's a way of serving Hashem. There are millions of Jews in the world today who do mitzvahs because of Yiras Ha'inish, are scared of the punishment that they could get, and they're awaiting the award they're going to get. And there are millions of Jews in the world who serve Hashem in such a way. But this is an elementary way, a beginning way of serving Hashem. And Chassidus brings us up to a higher level. What does it mean, Avas Hashem, Yiras Hashem? We learn in Tanya at great length. But Yiras Hashem, there's Yira Ilah, Yir Tata, lower fear and higher fear. Lower fear is Kabbalas O, like a servant. There's a fear, if a child, if somebody is traveling away, father is traveling away, and the child says, don't go. Are they scared the father will punish them, or they're scared of being separated from them? Many people says, I love it. Hashem is so great. How can I do something? Someone I love so much, I'm going to go against them and make them unhappy. It's a fear of separation, a fear of being away from Hashem. Right? There's higher levels of Yiras Hashem. Right? There's that's still in a certain sense about yourself. There's a higher level of Yiras Hashem, which that talks about like a tzaddik could feel it, like a malachim, how I'm only this. Hashem is me. This is my life. And fear and love are very intertwined, and usually one comes from the other. Right? Like we mentioned before several times in this Mesechta, there's some kings who rule from fear. Some kings who rule from love. People love them so much and they'll do anything for it. So you might think to say that people will come, if you translate this, will serve Hashem only for fear of punishment, but not for the sake of heaven, not to do what Hashem wants. It says in Pirkei Levis, the first parak, you should be like a servant who serves his master, not to receive a reward. And there's many reasons one could do it. A chassid, always in Gemara and Torah, is translated as someone who does rifnim and mishur sadim, goes beyond the letter of the law. was a chassid in Montreal. He was originally from Russia. His name is Hershel. He was a sheikhet, and he would say, when he became very, before he passed away, he was sick. He was in the hospital, and he gave like a big groan. Certain mitzvahs he couldn't do properly. He says, if I can't do it properly, at least let me do it the way it says in Shulchan Aruch. Which means like this. Shulchan Aruch is our guidebook, telling us what to do, day in, day out. A chassid is someone who goes beyond the letter of the law. And if Shulchan Aruch says it's okay to do A and B, and we'll try getting ourselves to do the best way, have the nicest tefillin, to daven with extra kavanah, to in every single aspect, in every single deed, and on Purim to give extra matanas lov yoinim, etc., etc. So we see that there's different types of love of Hashem, different types of fear of Hashem. The Gemara in Mesechta Sotah, for those who learned it, talks about two students of Rava, which had a dream. One says, a pasuk which said, "Ma'arav tuvcha asher sfant l'reyecha," the great reward for those who fear Hashem. And the other one had a dream which had a different verse, "V'yaltzu v'cha evei shemecha," those who love Hashem will be happy, will be joyful. He said there's two different types of ava and yira, love and fear. Love and fear of a punishment and reward is one lower level. A love and fear of Hashem, because Hashem is my life, and on a higher level, because Hashem is me, I'm so connected to Him. And on the deepest level, it's love of Hashem, which comes from the essence of who we are. We cannot be possibly separated from Hashem. And this connects with the Gemara before, which says, "Hakol b'idei shemayim chutz mi'yirei shemayim." Everything is in the hands of heaven, besides for fear of heaven. Yes, if you want to look at Hashem as a big scary God who's standing over us, that's one way of looking at Hashem. But it's in your hands how to relate to Hashem. Is Hashem my loving Father who I'm scared of disappointing? Or is Hashem a loving Hashem who we want to do everything and, God forbid, to disappoint? And that's what it means. A person could choose what level of Yireh Shamayim they have, of what fear of heaven they have, and how they associate with Hashem. Let's continue. So you might think to say that a person might come to serve Hashem out of fear, comes to tell you, Kamash Malan, that you're not concerned for this. Moshe Rabbeinu, when it came to the giving of the Torah, he thought that all the Jews are on his level. They thought that they're just like him, and they're able to receive the Torah directly from Hashem. And the Jewish people told Moshe Rabbeinu, we're not holding there. If we hear the Torah from Hashem, our neshama leaves our bodies. For someone on your level, you could do it. You get the Torah and you give it to us. And Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't happy. Why was he unhappy? Because he overestimated in a way that the Jewish people could be on his level. Well, it wasn't overestimating. Moshe wasn't naive. Jewish people were able to get on that level. There's a piece of Moshe Rabbeinu inside of them. There was one time where by Fabrengen, then the Fabrengen, and the Rebbe said that everyone should write in a Hasafa Lumina Torah, a addition in Torah learning that they're going to do, and to write it in and bring it to the maskiros of the Rebbe by the Rebbe's secretaries, and to bring it in. And the next day, when the Rebbe came back to 770 from his home, and they brought into the Rebbe a packet, a small little package of the notes of everybody saying what their Esafa, what their addition in Limit Torah will be, things that people wrote in. And the Rebbe was like disappointed, and the Rebbe said, when it comes to giving out, when we're giving out, whether it's lekach, dollars, etc., then there's lines, and the lines go down the block. The Rebbe says, I was expecting there should be lines down the block. Everyone coming to give him, what is their stuff, what is their addition in Limit Torah, in additional learning of Torah. Well, the Rebbe did not know who the crowd is. Of course, the Rebbe knows who we are. But the Rebbe says, that I thought, I'm assuming that you could be on this level. And if someone takes seriously, you could be on the level of what the Rebbe is and what the Rebbe expects of us. So Moshe Rabbeinu also expected the Jewish people to be on a higher level of serving Hashem. And the Brisa says the Tanoim thought the same thing. Maybe we shouldn't translate the rewards and the punishments in the Torah because people should not be trained to serve Hashem on this level. And the answer is that the Torah is for everyone. Torah is not just for a tzaddik, not just for a righteous person, not just for someone who's holding on a high level of serving Hashem. Torah is for everybody, even a person who their motivation to learn will be, getting 3 strikes at the end of the month. Even then, the Torah is for everyone. Continues the Gemara. Ma'ase Amnon v'Tamar nikra u'metargim. Tamar was a daughter of David HaMelech, King David. She was actually a daughter from a Yefas Toyar, a woman who was captured from one of the nations. And she was actually a sister of Avashalom, one from before she converted, one from after she converted completely. Now, Amnon and David, Amnon was the son of David. Amnon wanted to become king. David had many troubles at the end of his life from several sons of his who became rebellious. The one who took over the kingdom, became king after, was his son, Shlomo, King Solomon, Shlomo HaMelech. At the ripe old age of 12 years old, he already became king. But the older brothers of David HaMelech, David had 18 wives, 6 wives and 12 pilagshim, concubines. So David HaMelech had older sons who thought that they can become king. One of them was Avashalom. Famous story with him. Till today, you have the memorial of Avashalom on Har Hazeisim, standing, the one that he built for himself because he had no sons. You have another son called Amnon, and Amnon also wanted to get power and become king. And many different things happened to him. But one thing he did was that he had a sister from his father, David's daughter, called Tamar. And he made a ruse that he was not feeling well, and Tamar asked Tamar to help serve him, and he violated Tamar. So the Gemara says, Ma'ase Amnon v'Tamar nikra u'metargim. The story of Amnon and Tamar could be read and translated. Now, in today's Haftarah, so we don't have any Haftarah which has a story of Amnon and Tamar. So perhaps it was taken out. It was removed because of, perhaps it's not a proper story to say. Perhaps it was one of the other weeks where we insert other Haftarahs. Haftarahs about 3 weeks, etc., about the Beis HaMikdash, and about the other prophecies. But we don't have a current Haftarah which has a story of Amnon and Tamar. And there's actually a Gemara, several versions of Gemara, which says, Ma'ase Avashalom nikra u'metargim. The story of Avashalom was another son of David HaMelech who rebelled against him and made a full-on rebellion, which David had to escape from and fight back, etc. The story of Avashalom and what he did with his father's wives. So the wife of a king is never allowed to be married to anybody else afterwards. And the story of David HaMelech had wives, and Avashalom, basically what he did to his father's wives, basically he violated them also, etc. Because he's saying he said, "I'm a king, my father is old," etc. These both could be read and translated out loud. Now we don't read it as Haftarah. So the Gemara asks, Pshita, Why not? I would think for sure yes. The Gemara answers, David. You might think to say that I should be concerned for the honor of David, King David. That look, this is David HaMelech's sons. King David has such children. He's a father of Amnon, the father of Avshalom, and I shouldn't translate these. And it's not honorable for David HaMelech, King David. Kamash Milan, Gemara comes to teach us you don't have to be concerned, and these are allowed to be read and translated. It does not have any bearing on David HaMelech, because the fact that Avshalom rebelled and everything Avshalom did to David's wives was a punishment for Avshalom, a punishment for King David HaMelech, for what he did with Bathsheba, and later on his own son became rebellious to him, and Avshalom violated some of the concubines, the secondary wives of David HaMelech. And the same thing when it comes to Amnon. Amnon is also because of one of the things, one of the actions that David HaMelech did, and therefore it's a kapara. The fact that these two sons are being embarrassed, it helps them have an atonement. It helps them have a kapara till today. And we have a atonement to forgive the sons of David HaMelech for all of their actions. We see later on, David HaMelech, even after they were killed, he did everything he could to lift out Avshalom and David from Avshalom and Amnon from Gehenna, from purgatory. So we're going to continue today. It's a SImcha of the Rebbe from the year 1954. Purim was on Shabbos, and that year the Purim for bringing was on Shushan Purim. On Shushan Purim, which was Shabbos, and the Rebbe spoke about the specialty of Shushan Purim. Don't think we are on a secondary, lower level of Purim. Purim on Shushan Purim are the exact same level of SImcha. The only difference is on Shushan Purim, the day after Purim, you have to be even more happy than the rest of Purim. In Yerushalayim, in the places where they celebrate the 15th of Adar as Purim, they say Ala Nisim on Shabbos. But everything else, they do on Friday. They read the Megillah on Friday. They have their meal, festive meal on Friday. Or some even do it on Sunday, but they don't do it on Shabbos, because there's two different levels of SImcha, of joy. One is SImcha of Shabbos, and then one is SImcha, which is the Rabbanan, not from the Torah, of the SImcha of Purim. Now, there's different parts in the Megillah, and there's opinions from which part you need to hear the Megillah in order to fulfill the entire, to fulfill your obligation. We went through this previously in the Gemara, and we said whether it's from chapter 5, chapter 2, chapter 3, and they end up saying that you need to read the entire Megillah. But all of them spoke about the idea of Toikif. This is the main miracle. This is a main miracle starting from chapter 6. This is a main greatness of Mordechai starting from chapter 2. This is the main greatness of Achashverosh starting from chapter 1. Now, we don't really have in America a king in the same level as kings as you had back then. A king who is an absolute dictator over all civilization at that time. You don't really have that today. In heaven, Achashverosh, as we learned with Rabbi Tzvi on Friday, the level of Achashverosh is a level called Achris V'Reish Shaloi, a very high level of godliness. This person over here, his name is Radatz, Rebbe Tzvi. Radatz, his father was Rebbe Tzvi. Rebbe Tzvi was a very unique. Shalom Aleichem, Rav Moshe, welcome back. Thank you for joining us. His father, Rebbe Tzvi, was very unique. he saw 6 Chabad Rebbes. As a child, he saw the Alter Rebbe, he saw all the Rebbes in between, and when he was an elder Chassid, he saw the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Frierdiker Rebbe was in a baby crib. This is a father, this is a Radatz, Rabbi Tzvi. He was called the Hershel Chernigover. He was a rabbi in the city of Chernigiv for over 70 years. He was a tremendous Talmid Chacham, a tremendous Torah scholar, a tremendous Yiras Shamayim. He davened at length for many, many hours. So Rabbi Hershel Chernigover, as he was called, the Radatz Chaim, he was someone which didn't take into account the niceties of this world so much. He was someone who was really a person who was above how things ran. And even in a certain sense, when he was in his elder years, they told him, Russia was a very advanced country. They only had about, I think, 100 miles of paved road in the late 1880s or something. A very, very advanced country. And they told him there's this new invention called the automobile, the locomotive. He says, what is it? He says, you take a big machine and you put in kerosene, you put in fuel, coal, and it starts to move. He says, I don't understand how such a thing happens. He says, look, I have a lamp on my table. I put in kerosene or put in coal in my lamp, and it doesn't move. He didn't understand how it works. Whenever he would make a bracha, a blessing, he would first put his hand on his forehead, close his eyes, and think about the greatness of Hashem, and only then make a bracha, make a blessing. Now, the kings of Russia were not like the kings you have nowadays. There was no Congress, no judicial system on top of them. The last couple of years that there was a czar in Russia, this guy over here, he was a shikar, he was a drunk. And whenever the Jews wanted to do something, so they had to greet him, and give him a lot of honor. He was someone which had a big temper, and many czars had a big temper. So the czar one time came to visit the city of Chernigiv, and the custom was that they would come to greet the czar. The Jewish people, the Jewish community would greet the czar, and they would carry a Sefer Torah to greet the czar. Now, there's a special bracha, a special blessing when you're greeting a king. So with that, Hershel Chernigover went to greet the king, to greet the czar, and being the rabbi of the Jewish community, and he was the head of the delegation, and he's carrying a Sefer Torah in his arms to honor the king. And now they tell him the king is coming, the king's entourage is already going through the room. So before he makes the special bracha, blessing they make when you see the king, when you see your ruler, so he closed his eyes, he put his hand on his forehead, he's holding the Sefer Torah. And then with big kavanah, he's thinking about Hashem's name, one is, will be. And Elokeinu, Hashem is our koiches, our chayes, our life, and our giving us life every single second. And he's making the bracha, Baruch Shenosan, Mikvoidu Levasar B'dam, blessed are you, Hashem, who grants from Hashem's honor to flesh and blood. And he says it out loud because he wanted all the other people, the Jewish delegation, to answer Amen. The Tsar walks into the room. He sees somebody like this, dressed in strange clothes. This is the Radatz. Dressed in strange clothes, holding a Sefer Torah, hand up in the air, and he's screaming at the Tsar when he's shouting the bracha out loud because he didn't see. Like, what's going on over here? And I had to explain to him what it is, what's going on. So the Radatz, Rabbi Tzvi, he had a nephew who was a little bit more enlightened than him. And he told him, Uncle, do you know that this is a crazy, unguessable, you can't, unpredictable king. He's a drunk. You never know what he's going to do next. How could you act like in such a way in front of the king, in front of someone like this? And the Radatz told him, Petach, fool. He has a angel in heaven. Every single ruler of every ruler down here has an angel in heaven, which is in charge of them, protecting them, etc. SImcha the Friedrich Rebbe as well. We see that in Medrash about the Moshe Rabbeinu. So the fact that Achashverosh was such a powerful king means that he had a tremendous influence and a tremendous greatness in heaven as well. And still, Achashverosh was like the ruler of Iran today. He hated the Jews just as much as Haman did. And to the extent, when Mordechai and Esther came to him to ask him to take away the decree of killing the Jews, and he said, "Oh, too late, I can't do it, because I sealed it with my signet ring," meaning the strongest type of decree. So Achashverosh was so great, and he acted in a way that didn't make sense. He killed his wife, Vashti, his queen Vashti, because of his friend. And then he killed his friend Haman because of his wife, Esther. How does that even make sense? Like, is there any rhyme or reason to someone like Achashverosh? There is no rhyme or reason. It's all according to Hashem's decree and Hashem's desire. And the desire of Hashem from the entire Purim story was to lift up, raise Bnei Yisrael to a higher idea, to a higher plane, to accept the Torah out of their own free love, as was done. What is the real strength of Achashverosh? The real strength of Achashverosh is his greatness in heaven. So we have to read the Megillah from the beginning to talk about Achashverosh's great feast that he had, to talk about the real tokef of Achashverosh. That the real strength of Achashverosh is who he is from heaven, and the real point of Achashverosh is to elevate the Jews until the extent Achashverosh tells the Jews, "Write whatever you want in my name, whatever is good in your name." So in every single generation, you have similar things play out. You have the world. The world might look to be nice, to be polite. We will try fitting in as much as we can. Now, you might think to say, okay, this is the way it is, everything out there. Let me fit in. Let me do what I want. Let me do what they want. But if you act in the way like the Radats acted, you act in the way the Jewish people in the times of Purim acted, they realize that the world out there doesn't have anything against us. On the contrary, they're just waiting for us to show our strength and our pride, and then they're going to be helping us. So if you look at the world today, you look at the world which many times doesn't go straight with the Torah. As long as we stand firm, then you're going to reveal the strength of the Torah, the strength of the world. During the end of the life, the last few years of the life of the Megillah Rebbe, he passed away very young, age of 54. The Megillah Rebbe, the son of the Alter Rebbe, and he said a mimer which was called to understand why are Jewish children being kidnapped and abducted to the army. And he explains, because there's certain mitzvahs which every Jew does, but there's only certain mitzvahs which you could do with Mesiras Nefesh, with a self-sacrifice to give up your life. And these mitzvahs are so powerful and so important that Hashem makes it, God forbid, a decree that you should have certain people, certain Jews, unfortunately captive, even young little children, captive by the nations of the world, in order that they could have Mesiras Nefesh. Now, if it's a child comes down to the world, and he can live an entire life, not knowing who they are, and never keep a single mitzvah in their life, because the Torah said so, not even knowing that they're Jewish. A regular Jew has free choice, and he's born to the world to do Torah mitzvahs. If a child who was captive doesn't know any better, you can't demand from him to do Torah mitzvahs. It was unfortunately years ago, about 120 years ago in New York, there was a case in the hospital where babies, it wasn't so uncommon for them to be mixed up. And only recently they found out that there was a Jewish family which A Jewish boy ended up in an Irish family. An Irish boy ended up in a Jewish family. They always didn't understand why the boys look so different. And only recently they find out that they made a mix-up. So a Jewish boy is born from the moment they're born, and he's in a captivity. He doesn't even know he's Jewish his entire life. So what is the reason Hashem does such a thing? And that's the minor of the Megillah Rebbe. So certain mitzvahs which could only be done, or certain things which the neshama wants, and the neshama is crying out, and the neshama is crying out so deeply that nobody in the world understands it, and only Hashem can hear that cry. And when they do even one mitzvah, because of that deep feeling that they have inside of them, of the neshama, thirsty, that one mitzvah is worth it for them being born and going through their entire lives, everything like that. It says the word chet is sin means missing. And it says there's no Jew which should not sin. Maybe some Jews don't sin. Maybe some of the other people in the Shiur here don't sin. But many Jews also have the idea of a chet in a physical way, because the Jewish years don't go according to the age on your passport. So a person could think to themselves, life's so terrible. I'm never going to do anything right. And we tell them, we learn from Purim, and Shushan Purim especially, don't give up. Nothing to be worried about, nothing to feel despondent about. Even if you weren't raised and you didn't have the opportunity, and or you have somebody, even a child who never knows, not from his own fault, or even from their own choice, never knew, or we say, what was. But from now on, you could take out and find only the good in it, only the good, and on the contrary, use everything we had in the past to do in a better way. There's a halakha which says, Yish Shalom Das. It's a halakha that if somebody, if there's a lost object and the person gave up hope, so then it's hefker, it's free, it's ownerless, whoever finds it could keep it. But they have to know that they lost it. If they never lost it, if they never knew they lost it, they never gave up hope of finding it. Called Yish Shalom Das. They say Yish could also means hopelessness, despondency. And we say it means Shalom Das. It comes from not thinking, because if a person just would think, they would never give up hope. So it's learn Torah, do mitzvahs, another pasuk, another word, one more mitzvah. We're going to Mirza Hashem come to the ultimate completion of all the Torah and mitzvahs. So with that, we will continue tomorrow in Mirza Hashem.